Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
Average is the death you die in public while still breathing. It's the numb, repeatable rhythm of a life that was once born with fire and then beaten into quiet compliance. They'll never bury your body, they'll bury your potential. Every compromise, every delay, every excuse, every tomorrow piles up like dirt. Until you're standing in your own grave, smiling for cameras, scrolling through illusions, clapping for others who had the audacity to reject the script. Average is not a place, it's a slow rot. It's the stench of dreams unpursued and talent unlived. You weren't born to blend, you were born to bend the room. And if you ever feel that creeping comfort, that soft pillow of mediocrity begging you to stay, that's your enemy speaking in lullabies. They taught you to be humble before you had anything to be proud of. Told you to be realistic before you even tested your limits. They trained you to shrink so they wouldn't have to grow. But FSK that. Why should you fit into systems you were built to redesign? Why should you bite your tongue while those who did nothing speak louder than you? Average lives in the minds of those who stopped questioning, who took the default life package and smiled for photos in it. But not you. You weren't made for small days and quiet ambition. There's violence in your clarity. There's danger in your drive. And when you finally stop apologizing for how loud your hunger sounds, the world shifts. They want you polite, predictable, safe. The kind of person who goes to sleep early and dies without ever waking up. But there's something foul about living inside someone else's blueprint. You didn't crawl out of your darkness just to sit at a table with men who never bled. You didn't survive the nights that tried to erase you just to end up digestible. You were made for impact. And average men don't impact anything. They adjust to it. They don't carve paths, they queue up and beg to be chosen. You write in scars, you speak in standards. And when you enter a room, silence should fall, not from fear, but from awe, because you're the reminder of what a man looks like when he remembers who he is. Average is seduction. It dresses itself in comfort and calls itself balance. It offers short-term praise for long-term insignificance. But you're not here to be remembered as someone who followed the rules. You're here to break them so thoroughly they rewrite them in your name. Every time you play small, you shrink the permission for others to rise. So rise without apology. Burn through the ceiling. Make people uncomfortable with your standards. Average people will tell you you're too much, too driven, too focused, too relentless. But that's only because they've made peace with their cage. You're not crazy. You're clear, and clarity in a world of confusion terrifies the average man. Most people exist in a loop. Wake, work, repeat. They call it life. It's a checklist they inherited. A system designed to reward obedience, not originality. But you weren't built for loops. You're a breaker. You shatter predictability. While they rehearse mediocrity, you rehearse domination. Your day doesn't begin with comfort. It begins with conquest. Every hour you touch is a weapon. Every thought sharpened. Every move deliberate. You don't compete with others. You compete with your own limits. And if your goals don't scare you, then they are insults to what you're capable of. This world doesn't owe you a platform, but it does step aside for a man who owns his edge. Feck being average means feck being accepted by people who abandon their own greatness. It means you stop begging for validation from crowds who couldn't survive a day in your discipline. It means refusing to tone yourself down so lesser men feel taller. You weren't designed for their approval. You were designed for disruption. They laugh now. Let them. Their comfort will cost them everything. Because while they waste years numbing their purpose with distractions, you'll be stacking wins in silence, building an empire from the ruins of their doubt. And when the smoke clears, they'll ask how you did it. But they won't understand. Because your journey was forged in a language only the relentless can speak. There's no nobility in being average. There's only resignation, a soft whimper in the corner of your life, a ghost version of you that said, maybe next year. A man who knew what he could have been and chose numbness instead. Do you want to die with that echo in your chest? Or do you want to burn until even death hesitates to claim you? Being exceptional isn't about applause. It's about alignment. It's about waking up and realizing that your thoughts, your energy, your actions terrify the part of the world that needs everyone tame. But you will not be tamed. You weren't built for a quiet legacy. You were built to be unignorable. There's nothing romantic about small dreams. There's nothing noble about playing safe. The average man dies in the margins. No legacy, no stories, just mild opinions and unfinished ideas. But you're not satisfied until your life punches through the surface of expectation, until your presence becomes a metric, until your voice doesn't just echo, it instructs. Every time you resist the pull to shrink, you become a mirror that exposes those still lying to themselves. And mirrors aren't loved, they're feared. Let them fear you. Let them squirm in the presence of someone who refused to be ordinary. You owe your younger self that revenge. You owe your future self that respect. This world was not made for average men. It was made by those who rejected average. Every bridge, every empire, every system was built by those who refused to die quietly. You are here to disrupt, not because it's cute, but because your soul will rot if you settle. Let others seek comfort. You seek legacy. Let others binge. You build. Let them scroll. You sharpen. And when they ask why you're so intense, you look them dead in the eyes and say, because I buried the average version of me long ago, and I intend to keep him dead. Average is the resting place of the unchosen, the default coordinate where those without direction end up, not because they lacked breath, but because they lacked intention. Average is the dust that settles when no one stirs the air. It's the echo of a life that never left the ground. And the world, it's designed to place you there from birth. Tested, graded, measured, balked, all for the purpose of making you predictable. They feed you the lie early. Average means safe, average means accepted, average means normal. But you weren't made to be normal. You weren't carved from chaos just to become a number. You were made to violate norms, to insult the bell curve by climbing above it with such velocity it bends behind you. Because average is the statistic, not the story. The bell curve is a cage dressed in math, a quiet place where ambition goes to die in peace. It tells you where you belong, how you're likely to perform, and what your chances are. It pretends to be fair, but it's a coffin for the ambitious. The truth is, they study men like you only so they can say you're unlikely. Because if they can predict you, they can contain you. But you weren't built for containment. You are the reason their models fail. The outlier, the deviation, the anomaly. And anomalies don't wait for permission, they disrupt. You weren't born to hug the center line. You were built to grab the edge and snap it in half. Because while average is accepted, you came here to be unrepeatable. People fear what doesn't fit the pattern. They'll call it arrogance. They'll call it delusion. But really, they're scared. Because every man who breaks the bell curve exposes the ones who never tried. He becomes a mirror they can't look into. Because he didn't follow probability. He violated it. He didn't ask for odds. He made the world recalculate. That's the power you hold when you refuse average. It's not just that you rise. It's that your rise shakes their fiction. Every move you make becomes a challenge to the lie they settled for. And that's why they'll try to shrink you. Not because you're wrong, but because your existence reminds them they never aimed high enough. The average man lives in a straight line: school, job, retirement, death. Four corners, no edges, no blood, no disruption. He lives where things are explained and outcomes are measured. He trusts the curve because it gives him a map. But you were never meant to follow a map. You're a cartographer. You draw where others fear to go. The curve says you won't make it. Good. Then your story begins there. Because real legacy is built in the regions the bell curve calls impossible. And while they trade ambition for averages, you trade fear for fire. You stop asking, what's likely? And start asking, what's next to be shattered? When you move against the curve, you become the target. Not because you're wrong, but because you're visible. Because nothing threatens mediocrity more than momentum. Average men hate acceleration. It makes them feel late. So they criticize what they don't understand. They'll say you changed. Damn right you did. You escaped. You looked at the middle of the graph and said, "That's not where I'll die." And from that moment on, you carried gravity. The kind that bends expectations. You stop being a man. You become a standard, a force, a disruption. And when that happens, silence follows you. Not from fear, but from recognition. They know now, you were never one of them. Breaking the curve means paying a tax no one sees. It means building when no one's watching, failing in private, rebuilding in silence. It means enduring the shame of being misunderstood by everyone too loyal to average, but you pay it willingly, because the alternative is the slow suicide of settling. You'd rather be ridiculed at the edge than praised at the center. Because praise there is plastic. It's manufactured approval handed out to keep you calm. But men like you don't want calm. You want consequence. You want your work to echo, your name to shake floors when spoken. And that only happens when you look the average path, spit on it, and blaze your own with fire. The world worships balance until it sees imbalance with purpose. Then it watches. Then it imitates. But it's too late. Because the man who breaks the bell curve has already left orbit. He's no longer one of them. He's a chapter, a reference point, a thread. He becomes what teachers whisper about and what peers measure themselves against. Not because he had better luck, but because he rejected what they called reasonable. He stopped playing by the odds and redefined the baseline. And the moment he did that, the game changed. Because no matter how much they try to normalize it, average dies in the presence of exception. Let them be data points. Let them live by patterns. Let them repeat stories that were never theirs to begin with. You're not here to repeat. You're here to interrupt. You don't ask where you fall on the curve. You tear the curve apart and ask why anyone settled for it. While they trust predictions, you trust pressure. While they follow structure, you fracture it. And in that fracture, something real is born. A version of you that doesn't need to be measured to matter. A man who makes impact a habit. And when they try to fit you back into their curve, they'll fail. Because by then, your life will be the outlier that broke their math. You weren't born to be studied. You were born to be felt. To be the kind of presence that refuses to be averaged. That bends statistics by refusing the premise. You carry weight in how you walk, how you speak, how you build. Because you don't follow trends, you end them. And that's what they'll remember. Not your GPA, not your INSUM, but your refusal. Your violence towards settling. Your obsession with becoming unignorable. You'll be the man who proved that average was never the goal. It was the warning. A silent bell at the center of the curve, daring someone to break it. And you did. Regret is not a whisper. It's a scream waiting at the end of an average life. A slow, suffocating realization that you obeyed every rule except your own. You followed the path with the most footsteps and thought that made it wise. You chose stability because they told you boldness was dangerous. But what they never told you, what they buried deep in the fine print, was that the cost of safety is time. You don't feel it at first. You feel it in the silence between meetings, in the breath you hold during polite conversations, in the nights where your ambition comes back angry, asking why you silenced it. 54% of people regret their career path because they chose approval over alignment, because they chose easy applause over difficult truth. And now, they live in rooms decorated by decisions they never truly made. You think regret arrives in the moment. It doesn't. It waits, it ages with you. It watches you build the wrong things for the right reasons. Watches you clap for others while biting your own tongue. And just when you think you've adapted, regret shows up with evidence. Memories you buried, goals you shelved, talents you never fed. 60% regret not being bold. Not because they didn't have the chance, but because when the moment came, they froze. They mistook hesitation for wisdom. They chose the opinion of cowards over the voice of the future self screaming from behind the glass. That's the invoice. And average. It always comes with a receipt. It's just deferred pain disguised as comfort. You don't pay up front. You pay later, with interest. The lie they sold you is that average guarantees peace. It doesn't. It guarantees questions. Questions you'll ask in bathrooms and boardrooms and beds you share with people who never truly knew you. What if I'd tried? What if I'd gone? What if I didn't settle? And those questions will rot you from the inside, because you won't be able to go back. Regret only sharpens when time passes. The same moment that once required courage will now require reincarnation. And by then, it's too late to break the mold. You've already dried in it. That's the cruelty of the average path. It feels smooth while you're on it, and claustrophobic when you realize you never left it. The man who regrets his path doesn't mourn what happened. He mourns what never did. This is the blueprint they hand you. Pick a lane, pick a title, pick a box, and stay there. Work your years, cash your checks, and smile for the pictures. But what they don't explain is that this blueprint wasn't written for you. It was written to contain you, to make you predictable, profitable, easy to file, and you obeyed it, thinking you were making progress. But you weren't building a life. You were digging a grave for your own edge. And when the years catch up, when the reflection in the glass no longer matches the voice inside, that's when regret arrives, not as a storm, but as a realization you built everything except yourself. Boldness is not an impulse, it's a requirement. The price of greatness is paid in discomfort, and the men who regret not being bold weren't outmatched. They were just invisible. They played so safe they vanished into the crowd. They mistook surviving for living. Now they dress their regrets in nice suits, call them experience, and hand them to the next generation like poisoned inheritance. But you know better. You feel the ache of the average path even when you're still on it. You know that every day you delay your boldness, your future sharpens its knife. And one day, it will cut you clean with a word called could've. Regret is a predator that feeds on time. And once it starts feeding, it doesn't stop. It devours your self-worth. It rewrites your memory. It turns old photos into warnings. Every missed chance becomes a chapter in the book of what you abandoned. And the worst part, you won't even be able to explain it. You'll say things like, "It wasn't the right time," or "I had responsibilities." But deep down, you'll know the truth. You were scared. You let fear dress itself as practicality. And now, practicality owns your life. That's what average does. It hands you a comfortable rope and tells you to tie it around your ambition's neck, gently, quietly, politely. They tell you to be realistic. What they mean is be less, be smaller, be easy to manage. Realism has become the graveyard of dreamers. And yet, the men who haunt their own lives wear smiles. They laugh at bold men until those men build things. Then they call them lucky. But luck has nothing to do with it. It's war. It's refusal. It's obsession. It's choosing to pay your invoice now in blood, in effort, in hours, rather than later, in regret. Every day you push against the average life, you make regret a little more expensive to catch you. Every day you choose bold, you build immunity against that slow decay they call normal. A life without regret isn't perfect. It's lived, it's jagged, it's raw, but it's real. And that's what the average life lacks, substance. It's filled with fillers. Conversations you don't care about. Work that doesn't matter. Roles you never asked for. The man who chooses average doesn't get judged. He gets forgotten. And that is worse. Because to be hated means you had impact. But to be forgotten, that means you were a placeholder. A temporary feature in someone else's blueprint. You were quiet and polite and nice. And in the end, you were nothing. A life reduced to numbers and titles, absent of presence. Discomfort is the crucible that burns the average off your soul. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly, until your nervous system no longer flinches at pressure. You don't rise by thinking higher thoughts. You rise by enduring deeper pain. You build immunity to average not by reading more, but by suffering better. Not dramatic, performative suffering. Quiet, ritualized, lonely discomfort. The kind that comes with cold mornings and uncompromised routines. The kind that looks pointless to spectators and feels sacred to those in the furnace. Every man wants greatness. Few can tolerate the price. But that's the line. That's always been the line. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not destiny, it's tolerance. Who can stay in the storm long enough to bend it? There is no comfort at the top, only consequences. The world thinks high performers are blessed with better genes, sharper minds, golden circumstances. But the truth, they're forged from discomfort, from waking up early with no applause, from holding form under internal chaos, from doing the work when the world was asleep. That's not magic. That's exposure therapy to discomfort so relentless it rewired their baseline. They didn't wait to be ready. They trained until discomfort became background noise. The average man quits when things get hard. The exceptional man becomes numb to difficulty, not because he was born different, but because he made suffering his mentor. He ate loss, he drank silence, he sharpened in isolation. And now, what breaks others barely touches him. Talent is overrated. Discipline overstated. What separates giants from ghosts is tolerance. How much mental heat can you hold before cracking? How long can you carry the weight before dropping it? That's the test. That's the algorithm. It's not who runs the fastest. It's who keeps running when their legs go numb, lungs burn, vision blurs, and still they choose forward. You don't develop that through books. You develop that by bleeding, consistently, quietly. You take on more than you can handle until your capacity expands. And then you repeat. You don't lower the standard to match your tolerance. You raise your tolerance until the standard becomes home. That's how you build immunity to average. Most men avoid discomfort like it's poison. But discomfort is the vaccine, injected daily, slowly, violently, until your system can no longer be infected by mediocrity. Every early alarm, every missed party, every skipped indulgence, all of it compounds into a mind that no longer fears hard things. The more discomfort you face, the less convincing your excuses become. That's the paradox. Average becomes intolerable when you train yourself to tolerate what most run from. And over time, the gap between you and them doesn't just grow, it becomes irreversible. Because you didn't just outwork them, you outlasted their thresholds. They broke. You absorbed. You didn't resist the pressure. You invited it. You think greatness comes from clarity. No, it comes from endurance. From doing what must be done after the inspiration dies. From pushing past the motivational sugar high and entering the dry, empty hours where most men fold. And you build rituals, habits, non-negotiables. You welcome repetition. Because repetition done under discomfort transforms. Every time you feel resistance and walk through it, you're altering your chemistry. You're not just acting differently, you're becoming different. That's why people who stop growing can't understand you. Their lives are built around comfort. Yours is built around calculated stress. And that stress doesn't weaken you. It inoculates you against their disease. Average. You want to kill average. Do what hurts. Do it often. And do it without an audience. Because the true battle is invisible. It's internal. It's when no one's watching and your instincts scream for ease. You override them. You rewire them. You own them. The first time it's torture. The 10th time it's struggle. The 100th time it's identity. You begin to crave the edge. You stop chasing comfort and start engineering growth. And that switch, that's your passport out of mediocrity. Not money, not fame, just raw, repeated discomfort stacked with precision. Until who you are is a weapon forged in everything they avoided. Look at every man you respect. Behind the victories is a graveyard of painful mornings, uncomfortable decisions, isolated nights, and internal wars he chose not to run from. They didn't crown him. He crawled there, one broken routine at a time. One betrayal he didn't use as an excuse. One setback he didn't let define him. Every day was discomfort. And that's the secret. He didn't rise despite the pain. He rose through it. Because while the world was chasing ease, he was building resistance. And that resistance, that's the moat around greatness. A wall built brick by brick. From every moment he said, "FK comfort, I have work to do." Average men collapse under stress because they never trained inside of it. They sprinted when it was easy and quit when it hurt. But the man who builds tolerance, he doesn't run, he waits. He studies pain like a scientist, maps it, predicts it, learns to breathe through it. And in doing so, he becomes dangerous. Because the man who doesn't flinch under discomfort cannot be moved by pressure. He doesn't need hype. He doesn't need perfect conditions. He executes. Quietly. Brutally. Repeatedly. And when average men see him, they say he's gifted. But gift had nothing to do with it. He just built immunity while they were busy avoiding tension. You don't outrun average by talent. You outsuffer it. Willingly, you do what burns, what stretches, what shatters your rhythm. And you keep doing it until discomfort becomes home. You walk into fear and stay until it stops recognizing you. That's not inspiration. That's immunity. You don't rise because you're better. You rise because you're numb to what breaks them. You're calibrated, tempered, hardened through storms they never had the stomach to enter. You can tell who trained in discomfort by the way they hold silence, carry pressure, and walk unshaken. That's the cost. And the reward. You become someone average cannot imitate. You build immunity to average by repeated exposure to extraordinary discomfort, and every rep counts.